All right, friends, folks have heard me use this term, so maybe a little bit of explanation as to what I mean by a Goldilocks lease, which I'm really just referring to sort of right-sizing leases for the building, for the tenants, for the market, for the opportunities that are present. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. Remember, all buildings, all owners, all tenants, and all leases are just a little bit different. It's this, I think, is both the exciting and challenging part about working in the built environment with limited exceptions. Every building is different. And so it's difficult to regulate buildings through things like building performance standards. And it's also difficult to develop things like template leases that work for every building. There needs to be a little bit of right sizing, at least, that takes place. So a couple things to consider that comes top of mind for me when I'm thinking about how to sort of Goldilocks a lease or right size it, whichever one's more fun for you to say, is number one is sort of the educational level of everybody involved with respect to high performance leases, sustainable leases, green leases, whatever you want to call them. Everyone from brokers to consultants, again, owners, tenants, the lawyers that are working on these projects, everybody's on their own journey, right? And so taking folks where they are, collaborating, cooperating, educating and co-learning is really how we kind of move these things forward, right? But the education level, because some folks might be seeing these types of things like cost recovery clauses, for example, for the first time. And so how do we kind of consider that and work through those issues and educate everybody involved? The second thing is also thinking about what's the market appetite. So certain markets probably have a higher appetite for new leases. Some folks are really, really white knuckle gripping on their what I call emotional support lease. I think the important thing to remember with emotional support leases is if you feel comfy with that lease because it's worked for you for the past 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, the problem with that is, particularly in building performance standard jurisdictions, that a building performance standard sort of running in the background, the regulatory requirements related to performance of existing buildings, and all the related kind of aspects are not addressed in that lease. They just aren't, because if that's your emotional support lease, it did not even contemplate building performance standards because they didn't exist at the time. So there's a real risk gap. You might feel comfy and cozy with it, but it's not addressing a significant risk. So something to keep in mind there. But every market has a different appetite. So thinking about that. Another one is, what are the relevant laws that may come in and out of the picture during the term of the lease? So things like embodied carbon laws, disclosure requirements, carbon and climate risk disclosure requirements. Leases can last a long time. And so just how building performance standards came online and changed the game, it's expected that other decarbonization tools will also come online at the state and local level. So how do we think through those and use that knowledge to sort of right size leases for that particular aspect? Again, kind of the Goldilocks phenomenon. And then owner and tenant priorities. Those may not always align. And so how do we work collaboratively and cooperatively and in a transparent way to try and align those things so that we can use contracts like leases as the lever, basically, to meet regulatory requirements, manage risk, and add value. That's really how leases should work. And so, but they need to be right-sized. And so these are some of the things that I think about when I'm considering how do we develop leases and how do we implement them. Education level of everybody involved, the market appetite, what relevant laws may come into play, and owner and tenant priorities. So again, collaboration, cooperation, and really working together are key. So let's decarbonize and get those leases right-sized, or the Goldilocks phenomenon, as I like to call it.